Record. Leanne, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm excellent, Jason. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, for those who don't know you, I like to start off giving you an opportunity just to talk a little bit about your background, but more than a resume, how you kind of got to this point in your life. What path did you take? Um, go. Feel free to go there. So, go at it.
Great, thank you. Well, first of all, my accent is Sydney, Australia. So it's always fun talking to people across the world. And I am a psychologist and divorce coach. And the way I got here was through my marriage, actually. So I met my first husband when I was just 17 and got married when I was only 20. He was 22. So we were basically two kids who had no idea how to do relationship, and it became a very controlling relationship where he controlled and I submitted, and it was very toxic, and I really lost my sense of self in that relationship. We stayed together until I was 38, when by
Wow.
that point I had finally realized that I could not do this relationship anymore. Was having suicidal thoughts.
Oh my.
I was crying. I was, yelling. I was just this person that who am I? I really hate who I have become. And I actually started my degree when I was 30. I had a 1-year-old son at that point. And my husband used to say to me all the time, there's something wrong with you. All of our relationship problems are your fault. When are you going to go and do something about it? And he would never, ever, ever take responsibility for any of his behaviors.
That sounds
Yeah,
vaguely familiar.
yeah. I think a lot of your listeners will go, yeah, been there. Unfortunately. So I was a little bit in the, not a little bit, I was a lot in the blame game as well. It's all his fault, not my fault. I'm perfect. The only reason I'm like I am is because of you, sort of thing. But I went to see a psychologist, and after one session, I came home and I said, I hate my life. That's why I'm so sad. I'm going back to university, because I left uni first year in so I could get married.
Okay.
Um, yes, and that led me to do psychology. And at the end of that degree, I felt like there was still something missing. And that led me to start doing workshops and personal development and fall into coaching. And then I realized that, yeah, I love this mix of coaching and psychology. And I started focusing on divorce coaching because I know what it's like to be in a awful marriage, whether it be a long time or a short time, a toxic, abusive marriage. And I know what it's like to make that very hard decision to get out, and then the struggles of life afterwards. And I started focusing on working with men because I know a lot of female coaches only work with women, and a lot of men really need help. And then I missed working with women, so I added women to the mix as well.
I'm sure they missed you too.
Yeah.
But I like the fact that you decided to first focus on men because more and more recently I've had other people on my show who also focus and work with men, and because men, I think as a group, they tend to not get so much attention when it comes to divorce. That's what it seems like. It seems like a lot of the experts I speak with anyway focus on women. Most of my clients as a divorce coach myself are women, and but men, and it's interesting because it's 50-50. There's usually one side's a man, one side's a woman. Of course, now that's becoming more and more less common, but just from a traditional point of view. And it seems like one side always gets neglected, and I think that from my experience it's because men, I guess, they just find it harder to seek out that help. They don't want to seem vulnerable, and so they don't want to talk about it as much. But yet, for the people who run men groups, and people who work with men like yourself, men want to open up, and they want that support. So it's interesting to me that yet they crave it, but yet it's almost hard to find. So,
I agree.
so talk to me about how you how do you most commonly work with men when it comes to divorce?
Usually one-on-one. So I do have a program as well, an online program that people do, but I find the men really enjoy the one-on-one stuff because they learn so much. They learn how to open up about their feelings. They learn to actually talk. They are given permission to cry. They can run through what's going on for them and be heard. Where women, they do all that with their girlfriends and their therapists and their coach, and they talk to anyone and everyone about their stuff. Whereas men tend to keep a lot of that to themselves for fear of being judged or criticized or not believed. And I think in the States, it's the same as in Australia. A lot of guys aren't believed when it comes to traumatic experiences in their relationship. It's kind of put back on them that, like, oh, it must be something the man's done that's made that happen when it comes to abuse. So, men are abused in relationship as well.
Mm.
And I think it's really important to acknowledge that men are traumatized in relationship as well, and they need that space. And it is a lot harder for men to reach out. I definitely get more female clients, even though I really wanted to focus on men. As soon as I opened up my door to female clients, within like a week, I had a couple of women reach out to me, and it took months for me to get my first male client. And it was fortunately that I had my psychology business as well. So I didn't panic about that, but it was like, this is really interesting. It's really hard to reach out to men and let them know that there's help out there.
When you started working with men, did you ever ask them, what were the challenges or obstacles that you felt that, in trying to reach out and look for somebody like yourself for help? Did they ever express that to you?
A little bit. Some of them, she's thinking most of them came through referrals. So one of them, his adult daughter found me and took her like 6 months to convince him to come and see me. A few of them have been referred to by their solicitor or lawyer, others from a friend of a friend sort of thing. So
Right.
most guys actually come to me from referrals rather than being sought out, which is really interesting, isn't it?
It
Yes.
is because there's a layer of trust there, I guess, already coming from a referral that, they feel comfortable in approaching you, right? Because somebody
Yes.
else has already kind of opened that door on their behalf.
Yeah. And giving them permission to actually say, you know what, I think you would really benefit from this, rather than them actually thinking to themselves, maybe they do think I need help, but they don't know who to go to or how to find someone. So someone else saying, you know what, I know this person, I think they can help you out. Why don't you contact them and have a chat and see if you're a good fit? And that kind of breaks the ice, and we talk, and then, that happens. And you probably, do you find the same thing when it comes to men reaching out to you?
I do. I find there's more hesitancy at first, or skepticism.
Yes.
And it's not until after you start engaging them and they realize, oh, this isn't so bad, and in fact this is pretty good. Getting
Yes.
this type of help. It's one of those things like coaching. You don't realize how valuable it can be until you really start doing it, right?
Yeah.
It's in a way it's a hard sell for people because what we deliver are intangibles. We're not really, you know, giving return on investment or, saying, right, your portfolio is going to grow 10% after working with me for 6 months. No, it's like, trust me, this is going to be good for you.
I know. Yes. I'm going to help you find yourself and be happy and get through this process. I'm going to support you. And then they're like, okay. And women tend to really go, yes, 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 this is exactly what I need. And men are like, all right, let's give it a go.
Right,
Well,
right. It's like buying a car or something, and you don't trust the salesman.
yes. But in
um,
saying that, the men that I work with always get really good results. Like they dive in, they're like all in. They don't come and just talk about the, you know, the shit
Fluff.
of the day. They just get in there and they really go for what they need. And I love that about working with men. It's always very focused, to the point, and they allow themselves to drop down into their emotion with that support. They surprise themselves. You know, I've had many a guy say, oh my God, I haven't cried since I was 6 years old. And that was so good. And they were terrified of the whole concept, but once it happens and they release all that emotion, it's like, wow.
So let's talk about that. Let's get into a little of the psychological aspect. I like that.
Mm.
Because there is a lot of psychology when it comes to coaching. And I feel like we wear two different kind of hats. And I'm not a licensed psychologist, but I play one on TV. How do you get men to cry? How do you get anybody to cry?
It happens all the time. I think I have a lot of empathy for my clients, and I can often see where they're coming from. And I ask the right questions. Really, that's all it's about. It's about really understanding where they're coming from and asking the right questions and going slow. So if a person can connect to their pain, whether it be their childhood pain or the pain in their relationship, and they're actually seen and heard, it opens up the floodgates. It opens up your heart. And it's like, oh my God, wow, this is actually how I feel. This is everything that I have stuffed all the way down to my toes, and I'm never going to look at it. And somebody has given me permission to be brutally honest with myself. And I think that is such a gift. Like, as the therapist or coach, when that happens, I just feel so connected to that person and honored is the word. Like, that they trust me enough to allow that to happen is a magnificent thing.
Yeah, no, that is a huge sign of, I guess, comfort, the comfort level somebody has when they are able to express themselves and open up like that in front of you. But what is it? Do you go back and spend a lot of time, in really like traditional psychotherapy, going back into somebody's childhood to figure out, how they got into the relationship or why they feel the way they feel? Do you spend a lot of time doing that type, or it sounds like it?
Yeah, I do a bit of both. I can't help myself. It's really hard to not, when you know these beautiful techniques that really make a difference. As an example, I had a person, this has happened with both men and women, so I'm going to speak very generally and say they, because it's the same,
Sure.
who really struggled letting go of their partner, even though their partner was quite abusive. And they knew that they couldn't go back, but they went back and broke up, went back, broke up. And so we did some work on this, and I like to get into the person's body. So I ask them, where do they feel it? Often it's in the chest or the throat or the gut, sometimes their head. And then I get them to really express how they feel in their body. And I ask them, what does that remind them of? Sometimes it's an adult thing, but usually it's, oh God, I just have this memory of when I was 6 years old and my dad left, or my mum did this or whatever, and I felt so lonely. And that sense of loneliness and I need to be with someone is triggered from their childhood stuff. And consciously, we don't know that. But when you start to really sit with it and feel into it, it takes you right back to that little child. And then I do a little bit of inner child work where the adult you kind of reparents that little child and comforts them and loves them and tells them that it's not their fault and understands them. And when they finish that process, they're like, oh my God, okay, this is why I have such an unhealthy attachment to my ex-partner. This is why I feel like I can never be alone, or I can't handle myself, in my own space. I always want to be with someone, or whatever it is. So going back to that root cause creates a huge shift, and I love it. I really love it.
It's great to see what do you call it, the not the path, but the path, but somebody when they first start with you, and then, the journey that they take emotionally, and then when they, to get to their end goal, hopefully, right? That journey is that arc, right?
Yes.
It's very satisfying as a coach to see people do that. I know that's what moves me. So
Yeah.
when you work with somebody as a coach, um, what is your goal with them? Is it, do you define that early on, or is it something that kind of appears, during the process?
I kind of work with them on what their goal is. So sometimes there's a lot of, because I'm kind of like an emotional coach, I guess, walking them through their issues with their ex-partner or themselves in moving on. But we also do like normal kind of coachy stuff where we look at, well, what do you want in the next 12 months of your life? What are you going to do to get there? What steps are you going to take? So we do all of that as well. And I look at what's blocking them, what's stopping them from taking those steps now. What support do they need? Other than me, even, do they need to get a solicitor if they haven't already? Do they need a financial planner? Do they need a naturopath, or do they need to get some medical stuff sorted? Because often people neglect all those aspects of themselves when they're so distressed. So I really like to look at the big picture.
Do you work with most of your clients? Do you work with them in like pre-divorce stage, or are they, ready to get divorced, or or already started the process?
A bit of both, actually. Sometimes it's just in the separation stage where one of them has left the home. Sometimes they're still in the same home,
Right.
and they just don't know what to do. They're afraid of what's going to happen next. They're scared they're going to take back their ex-partner, even though they know they can't, for their own sanity. I've had some people who have been separated for years, like 10 years, one fellow, and he was still very much stuck in the past and could not move on, hadn't dated, hadn't thought about it, was still very angry about what had happened.
10 years. Wow.
Yeah, very, very, very unwell, because he had just drank and ate himself into this place of stuckness. And it didn't take long for him to actually start taking action. Like pretty much immediately he was swimming and stopped drinking, and it was like, right, okay, I can do this. I was like, all right, this is awesome. So sometimes you just need someone to really offload to, and someone to really coach you through that stuckness. So
Yeah.
it really varies.
Yeah. No, that's really great. What do you think are some of the biggest obstacles, or the most common challenges that you find people that you work with, um, I guess we'll stick with men, face, and that you help them work through when it comes to divorce?
For men, one of the biggest things is the children.
Mm.
They're still, I have to be careful of my wording here,
No,
because
just say it.
it really bothers me. There's still too many women out there who think they own the children, and that they deserve to have the children, and they really disrespect the father in the relationship. And it's so important, and it drives me crazy. Excuse me. Because to a child, the mother and the father is equally important, and a child needs their father. And when women tell kids and courts, I know there's a lot of people out there who do false accusations so that they can have their children, or they say, well, no, you're not getting 50%, or you'll be lucky if you see the kids again, all this sort of stuff. And I know
Right.
men do that as well, right? I know this happens both ways, but more often it happens with men, and men have to fight to see their children. And that is just so wrong, because it damages the children. It actually damages the relationship with the child and the mother, because they can see what's going on when they're a bit older. It damages the father-child relationship, and it absolutely damages the father and his mental health. And I've worked with a lot of men who have been alienated, falsely accused. I had one guy who basically had a number one sort of buzz cut. He purposely grew his hair and took himself off to get drug tested every single week of his own accord because she was accusing him of using drugs, and that stopped him from seeing his children.
Oh my
And he
goodness. Yeah, when I practice as a divorce attorney myself here, I would hate it when I saw anybody trying to use the children as a weapon.
so
And especially in the domestic violence arena, we have very strong laws for domestic violence, and for good reason. But when sometimes people use them as a weapon as opposed to a shield for which they're intended,
mm,
it could be very damaging, and hard for that parent who's it's being used against to
yeah.
dig out of. And so, yeah, I hated seeing that. That's not what it was intended for. And the children, at the end of the day, are the ones who suffer the most.
Oh, for sure. And, one of the reasons I chose to work with men was because of the suicide rate in men. And I did a little bit of research, and 3/4 of all suicides pretty much around the world are men.
Really?
Yeah. So in the States, oh my God, the suicide rate in the States is insane. I know the population is a lot bigger than Australia too, but there's a lot of guys that take their own lives in America, something like 38,000 men a year. That's a lot of people.
Yeah.
And after a separation, when someone is not allowed to see their children, it's absolutely devastating. And especially when there's no real good reason. So if the dad is, working and he's got no major concerns, I mean, we all have issues, but if there's no reason that you can't see your child, and there's been lies and court and hundreds of thousands of dollars and delay, that can be really devastating to somebody, especially if they're too scared to ask for help and they think that what's it going to do anyway?
Right. I'm glad you brought that up, because that sense of hopelessness, right? Everybody who's been through divorce and who's been through the courts in some way,
Mm,
nobody has a good experience, really, right? The courts, at least here, I don't know how they are in Australia, but the court system here is, I'll say, not perfect. And nobody enjoys going through that process. It's long, it's expensive,
yeah,
and nothing really good comes out of it. Having another person, whether it's a judge or somebody else, try to make decisions for your life and your children, right?
yeah,
And so, that sense, people feel like, that have that sense of apathy though about it. Like, well, what's the point of fighting, or what's the point of doing anything? Which is unfortunate and sad, because there's a time and a place to fight. And I always tell that to people. Usually it's always kind of like a risk benefit analysis at the end, deciding what's worth fighting for and what's worth not.
yeah,
But sometimes you got to fight,
absolutely.
and right, and trying to, and seeing that apathy and that hopelessness in somebody, that really hurts me as a coach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, agreed. And, when I have clients like that, whether it be male or female, I kind of use what you just said, that your children are worth fighting for, and your children are worth staying alive for. And this is your opportunity now to grow yourself as an individual, whether you're mum or dad, and be the best version of you that you can possibly be, so that when the time comes that your kids get to see you again, you are going to be amazing, and they're going to love being with you, rather than this person who is depressed and anxious and drinking and resentful and all of that sort of stuff. And I have seen many times people rebuild their relationship once they started rebuilding themselves. So, they almost put their children in a box over here for now, like, okay,
Right.
I know my court's not for 6 months. I'm not going to be able to speak to my child or see them for 6 months. So I'm going to put a different hat on, and I'm going to work on myself in that time. And that creates a very different energy. So when they finally do get to court, it actually shifts things.
Sure.
and they cope with that, and that's really good.
That's right. And a situation like that is a good opportunity to show the court, if somebody is painting a certain picture of you, to show the court that that's not me and that's not accurate at all. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yep.
Or even, okay, fine, that was me, I admit to that, but it's not me anymore.
Right.
I've learned from this, and my children are the most important thing to me. I've done what it takes, and I'm ready, willing, and able to be a parent again.
Absolutely. People can change, and so you have to show that pattern of behavior, right? What
Absolutely.
before we wrap up here, what would be your one or two biggest tips that you can give to somebody who is going through a tough time, and maybe is facing divorce, or just got served with papers, um, about what to do, and how to you know kind of think about moving forward? What would you advise?
So many things. Of course, the first one is always seek support. And that support could be your friends or family, but be very, very careful who you
Mm,
seek support from, because friends and family can be quite biased, and they can say really negative things about your ex that is just unhelpful, because that can rev you up and make you really angry and all of that.
right.
And that's not helpful in the long run for you. So be mindful who you talk to. Are they really helping you, or are they keeping you stuck? And sometimes it takes a good deal of self-reflection to ask, are my friends actually helping me? Like, they make me feel good in the moment, but in the long run, is it helpful? I always say that friends that want to take you out and get you wasted every weekend are not helpful. That's also going to keep you stuck.
True.
And, also, take some time out for yourself to really reflect on what you actually want in your separation. More often than not, and be interested to know if you get this as well, I ask people, what do you want in your separation? And they say, I don't know. I think,
Yes.
well, you can't go to your lawyer or attorney with, I don't know. It's going to cost you a load of money to figure that out.
Yes.
So, I'm not going to charge anywhere near what they're going to charge. And your lawyer or attorney is not your counselor or your therapist or your coach. They're going to charge you anywhere in Australia from $300 to $600 an hour. And it's not their job. So they don't know how to do that well. They're going to be very blunt and to the point. But it's up to you as the client to know what you want. So, that's when talking to a good friend or a therapist or a coach can help you figure that out, so that you are not giving it all away to keep the peace. So many people want to do that.
Sure.
Or wanting it all because you're so fucking pissed off. Excuse the language.
No, please.
I do swear a lot.
Well, it took you only half an hour.
I know, I've been holding back. So yeah, there's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah,
And
and you mentioned friends, good friends and family, and they do play a role, but I always stress, objective professionals. Friends and family are not objective, right? They're subjective, and they're gonna be on your side, as they should, if they were good friends and family. But what you need is objective advice, and people, like, as a coach, I always say I give you the good, the bad, and the ugly, right?
Yes.
Because what's the point of sugarcoating things? You're not gonna really help somebody by doing that. And so you just got to be wary about who you're talking to, for what reason, and just understand that if you're talking to a friend or family member, they're coming from a different place, a good place probably, but right, maybe not be the most objective, which is what you need.
That's right. If they challenge you gently, then that's a beautiful thing. If they just agree with you on everything you say, that's not good.
No, that's what we call a yes person, right? We don't need that.
Exactly.
Well, Leanne, this was so much fun. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really loved talking with you, and hopefully everybody listening got a lot of golden nuggets out of this. Where can people find you?
On my website, so www.leannekanzler, KANZLER.com, or on Instagram. I just started TikTok.
Oh boy.
Yeah, it's actually kind of fun, but I do not post a lot, right? I'm not one of these social media people that post every day. I post when I feel like it. I know it's not great, whatever. They can send me an email. So yeah, which is just leanne@leannekanzler.com. I'm happy to talk to anyone, help you out.
That's great. And do you work? I know you're in Australia, but do you work with people all over the world, in the States?
Yes, yes. I've had people reach out to me from Dubai and India
Oh,
and
wow.
yeah, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't always work with them, obviously, but sometimes I just send them a little tip or just reach out, and it's quite nice. I like that because they're in very different spaces, and I love learning a lot about different cultures, and it's really interesting. But
Right. The
yes, I've
dynamics.
spoken to a few people in America, and yeah, I've learned a lot from speaking to Americans. There's a very different legal processes over there than here. However, I mostly focus on the emotions and getting you through, so none of that really matters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's what's so great is that you could be across the world, and with technology and Zoom today, that it's easy peasy, just like we're doing right now.
Yeah, exactly. You might as well be my next door neighbor right now.
We could be in the same room.
We could be.
Well, Leanne, thanks again so much. You were a great guest, and I very much appreciate having you on.
Oh, I loved being here. Thanks so much.